Alright everyone, welcome to the channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the capitulation we're currently experiencing on both the Ethereum US dollar pair, and then we're going to be moving over into the Ethereum Bitcoin pair to see how Ethereum is holding up against Bitcoin. We're also going to be taking a peek at the Bitcoin dominance, as this will give us a pretty good indication of how altcoins such as Ethereum will be performing against Bitcoin if we do continue to break up. Let's jump right into the video. First of all, if you already watch my channel, maybe this is your first time watching my channel because, maybe you look at Ethereum videos and Ethereum is not something I typically cover. I haven't covered Ethereum in quite some period of time, and that is something that you will know if you are already subscribed to my channel. So when I am covering Ethereum, you know that something pretty big is going on. Let's jump right into the video. To start off with, I'm running off two fibs from these lows down here in September of 2020. The first one is to the previous all-time high that we made in May of 2021. And then we're going to be talking about the macro fib that is coming all the way up to ETH's all-time high at $4,800. What you'll notice is with both of these Fibonacci's, with both of these macro fibs, we have a double 618 or a double golden pocket, which is basically this orange box, which encompasses both of the Fibonacci's very nicely. The number one takeaway and the number one thing that I'm going to start off on the ETH USD pair is the fact that we've just capitulated below the 618. This is really not what you want to see whatsoever. And first of all, as long as we hold it on the weekly time frame, technically there's nothing to worry about. However, I'm going to be talking about the Bitcoin dominance in a minute, and this is kind of what leads me to believe that we wouldn't be holding it. But let's just say hypothetically we hold it. What could we expect? Because drawing from our previous fib, obviously we wouldn't have been able to draw this fib from back here because we wouldn't have known when ETH topped out. Drawing from this fib specifically, let me delete this again to make sure I can get it back. We came all the way down, we back tested your 618 fib, your 618 was right here, and we actually moved below it 3 times. But like I said, these were all wicks. We had a perfect, absolutely beautiful triple bottom over on the ETH USD pair, and the triple bottom was confirmed at around $1,800 on the 19th of July. We subsequently pumped after confirming the triple bottom because you can see we closed 2 weekly candles exactly on the 618 Fibonacci. Because we were able to hold the 618 Fibonacci, you know how it is. If you're holding the 618 Fibonacci in an uptrend, then you're still bullish. If you're coming back up to the 618 Fibonacci in a downtrend, and I imagine we might have done something like this here, we almost did, so hypothetically you come up to the 618, that confirms that you're still in a downtrend if you are going to continue moving to the downside. So what did we do after we held the 618? We continued to have a massive rally. ETH went from its previous all-time high of 4,400 all the way up to basically 4,800 or 4,900 approximately. And it's very important that you do hold the 618 because you don't hold your 618 and you will experience a massive capitulation. Drawing from both of these fibs now, because after this rally we came down, confirmed the initial 618 that we had, then we rallied up and we made a new all-time high. So we've got a double 618 box at this moment in time. It's much more important in my opinion to focus on this 618 Fibonacci, which we've already capitulated below, but these macro areas, bear in mind, even if you don't want to consider it a Fibonacci anymore, it was a triple bottom structure. This was where we closed the previous candle body close. Even if you don't want to consider this 618 fib valid anymore, which I would, then you've still got it would not be good, is what I'm trying to say, if you capitulated below the 618 Fibonacci. We don't even need to go over to the Heikonashis to see that we are in a brutal downtrend right now, which is really not subsiding. Let's talk about the volume and our momentum indicators, then we'll move on to the moving averages and the Bitcoin pair. Looking at the volume in the past month and a half, 2 months, coming on for 2 months next week, we've just had a huge inflow of sellers, and I'm not even looking on the Heikonashis, but it's just a straight capitulation. What you'll notice on our momentum indicator, looking at the squeeze mom, is this is not a good sign. And I don't think we've done anything like this We haven't done anything like this on the weekly time frame in ETH's history ever. So what we did is, you know, from this impulse up here after we had the dead cat bounce, we continued to capitulate all the way down to where we're sitting at right now, just below $2,000. While this was happening, you know, we had a massive bearish rally to the downside. The bearish momentum started to subside while we were having this dead cat bounce, and then what you'll notice is coming into this week, we've got the light red on the squeeze mom stepping back in. If you haven't checked out the squeeze mom before, when you're in a bearish trend, light red means bears are in full control. When you switch over to the darker colors, whether it's dark green meaning bulls are losing control, or whether it's dark red meaning bears are losing control, it basically means what I said. They're either losing control or they're taking a break until they decide to have their next rally. And it seems like we've never seen this before on ETH ever. The only time where we've seen anything like this is where we rallied, the bulls took a break, you can see this turned over into the dark green candles, and once we switched back over into the light green, what happened? We had a crazy rally. What is happening right now? It is the exact same as this, but the inverse. The bears took control, the bears are running out of momentum, and now the bears are stepping back in. It is only, I believe it's Thursday today. It is Thursday today, and the amount of volume we've had on this week is 43,000 Ethereum. Looking at the daily candle, we're seeing exponential volume starting to step into the market. And while the lower time frames, like the daily squeeze mom, hasn't necessarily flipped back over into a massive bearish wave, we are forming an M pattern on the USD pair, which is not really good. I'm not going to take the price target of it. I'm looking at much more macro moves, but looking at the 4 hourly time frame on the squeeze bomb, the bears are fully stepping in. This is going to bleed over into the daily time frame. Once the daily starts to bleed over, then we could see a huge capitulation on the weekly time frame. Now, there's really not a lot holding us up at this moment in time. We really don't have too many supports built out for us, and the only logical thing to do would be to assume that as we don't have too much volume traded between here, it was pretty much a straight line up, W pattern breakup. You can see this back test of the 786 right here was perfect, absolutely perfect. So not only are we able to take the next area of support coming in for Ethereum down at this double 786 Fibonacci, but this is also confirmed by a couple of weeks, basically a month worth of touch points on this. You know, we came up into this for a week, we held it, we sat in here for another week, sat in here for another week, back tested it after that week, back tested it after that week, and then like a month later we perfectly came down, back tested it, and then we were off to the races. So this support zone down here, which once again I'm going to mark as orange. If you're new to my channel, whenever I have a Fibonacci, I always like to mark them as orange to distinguish between support and resistances. For example, if I have a trend line which is purely a resistance zone, I'll mark it red. If I've got a trend line which is a support zone, I'll mark it green. If I have a support trend line which is coming into a Fibonacci level, like this double 618, like this double 786, I'll mark it as orange, mainly because they call the double 618, or they call the 618 the golden pocket. So I just mark these as orange just to remind me that we are looking at fibs. And this is the next fib zone that we've got. If we do break down, which it does look like Ethereum wants to do, we could be expecting another 29% drop until we come down to any area of support. The next level down from this on the next 786, which is this the macro one down here? Let me see. So no, that would be the first one. So I definitely think keeping our eyes on 1,300, this is the most likely place for us to next bounce. Like I said, this is pretty much a 30% drop. Let's just call it 30%. There's no point in saying 29.89. This would be another 30% drop for Ethereum. What other charts would back up my hypothesis that this would be happening? Well, first of all, I only want to spend like 30 seconds on this chart, but the Bitcoin dominance is breaking out. What is the Bitcoin dominance? It is the percent of the total crypto market cap that constitutes of purely Bitcoin. What does this mean? When the Bitcoin dominance is rallying, it simply means that out of the total crypto market cap, Bitcoin is taking up a higher percentage. Doesn't really have too much to do with the market cap, although it is calculated by the market cap. That is not what we need to know. We are looking at the percent that Bitcoin takes up of the total crypto market cap. And what happened the last time we were forming, you know, a channel? What happened the last time we were forming a pattern down at these lows? Well, this was coming into the 2018 bear market. What happened once the Bitcoin dominance started to rally from all the way down here at 35% all the way up to 74%? Well, we entered a bear market. We entered about as much of a risk-off phase as you can get in the crypto markets, and by a risk-off phase in the crypto markets, I mean people are de-risking their trades, and by that I mean they're exiting altcoins, they're selling altcoins for fiat, stablecoins, and Bitcoin. This is why we saw the Bitcoin dominance go from 35 to 74%, meaning that even though the market cap of all the cryptos were going down, Bitcoin was heavily outperforming all the altcoins because everyone was selling their altcoins for Bitcoin. And I've done a video on this before talking about that theory, and it seems to have played out in this this bear market. I mean, the data doesn't lie. Coming into this bull market, you can see once again Bitcoin dominance dumps. And what's actually very interesting is the Bitcoin dominance didn't dump as hard as it did in the previous cycle, which is very interesting. And it wouldn't have exactly been what I thought would happen, considering how you would have think that that the Bitcoin dominance would have diminishing returns to the downside, because obviously, you know, back here there was only Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, etc. And then coming into here, we've got tens of thousands of altcoins which take up a decent market cap. So like I said, I'm going to wrap up the Bitcoin dominance here. I don't want to spend too long on this, but we are breaking out. While this breaks out, it is likely for altcoins to underperform against Bitcoin. What is another data point backing up the fact that I think Ethereum is going to massively capitulate against the US dollar and Bitcoin? Before we jump into ETH BTC, well, what's Ethereum done today? It's moved down 5%. What's Bitcoin done? Bitcoin is down 1.27%. So this is where we move on to our Ethereum BTC pair. You can clearly see, not just in the past week, not just in the past couple of months, but today we're absolutely landsliding against the BTC pair. This is what I mean. Ethereum is underperforming against Bitcoin right now. We're down about 4% on the day. And there's a few different ways you can look at this, because a lot of people, I guess, would like to argue the point as well. You know, ETH maxis that don't necessarily appreciate Bitcoin could argue something like this, and they could still say that Ethereum is in a massive uptrend in the long term against Bitcoin. And I would definitely agree with you. I'm not taking that away from Ethereum. I definitely do agree. You can't disagree. I mean, I love Bitcoin. I don't necessarily care too much about Ethereum. I care more. I hold Bitcoin because it's the safest crypto and I believe in it. I buy altcoins because I want to gain more Bitcoin. I don't really care too much about Ethereum. I don't hold Ethereum. So the analysis that I'm giving you today is from a completely unbiased perspective. It doesn't matter to me whether Ethereum goes up or down because I don't hold it. But I do think, you know, that the data is pretty clear. In the long term, it seems like Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin because, you know, it's got more projects being built on it. Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts, so people can't build DEXs, platforms, swaps, all these different things on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. As of now, that may change in the future. That is probably definitely going to change in the future when Bitcoin implements smart contracts. But at this moment in time, there's more development happening on Ethereum. There's more devs, there's more people building stuff, etc, etc, etc. It's got a pretty big market effect, and a lot of people are piling into Ethereum over Bitcoin for the long term. And I understand. I'm more into other altcoins that have better returns than Ethereum, and I hold Bitcoin because I believe it's safe. But long term, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we came down, maybe not this far, but I still do think Ethereum is going to be macro bullish against Bitcoin. And that's coming from someone who doesn't like, or I don't necessarily not like Ethereum. I just don't really care about it. So take that with a grain of salt. You know, I'm saying in the short term, Ethereum is going to come down against Bitcoin. In the long term, I still think it will outperform Bitcoin. So don't throw rocks through my window. I'm just looking at the data from a unbiased perspective. And what did we do in the last bear market, or what did we do when we topped out in the last bull market for Ethereum? Well, I looked at this for about 5 minutes and I was thinking, you know, how am I going to analyze this? Because this really wasn't what we saw this market cycle. And you could argue something like this, and this is kind of what we're doing now, where we had this uptrending level of support and we broke below it, but we had a massive capitulation wick below this, and this structure really does not look anything like this structure. I'm not trying to say that they're at all equivalent whatsoever, because they clearly look very, very different. But the matter of the fact is, you know, we are capitulating below this trend line, and this very much reminds me of what we did over here. Now, when we flip super bearish for Ethereum against Bitcoin is actually when the weekly EMA ribbons flipped bearish on the ETH BTC pair. And while I'm talking about the EMA ribbons, I forgot one small detail on ETH USD. You zoom in and you can see I have the short-term moving average and the long-term moving average on these EMA ribbons slightly thicker than the other moving averages, so you can tell the dark green line is the short-term moving average, the lighter green line, which is slightly more transparent, is the long-term moving average. What happens when the short-term moving average crosses below the long-term moving average? Well, this is when you have a bearish EMA flip, and if we go back to the last time this happened, you can see bearish EMA flip, ETH against the US dollar capitulated 83%. Do I think we're going to capitulate another 83% this time? Absolutely not. I don't think it's going to happen. We have diminishing returns. That has been proven this market cycle. You know, the first market cycle, Ethereum rallied 21,000% from the lows. This market cycle, it rallied 4,500%. So if it's not going to be able to go up as high as it did previously, then in my opinion, the diminishing returns to the downside would also be equivalent. We would not be going down the same amount that we did last market cycle, which makes sense to me to kind of target, you know, these lower price targets like 1,300, 1,100 or so. This would be approximately about 75% drop from the all-time high. I definitely think that is a pretty conservative target. Nonetheless, let's move over into ETH BTC now. We just reiterated, or you know, remembered and talked about the fact that the ETH against USD pair is about to capitulate on the weekly EMAs. There is literally no way that this is not going to flip bearish unless by the end of the week, because if we close a weekly candle below here, then instead of taking in data points from, you know, this week, we're going to be taking in data points from this week as well. Well, we're going to be taking them in anyway, but you know, we're replacing data points from somewhere within these kind of vicinities, depending on what moving average you're looking at, to the data points down here. So we're obviously, the short-term moving average is going to move down pretty hard, unless Ethereum reverses and pumps above, you know, $2,900 by Sunday, then this EMA is going to flip bearish. Coming back over to the ETH BTC pair, what I really wanted to highlight is it doesn't matter how you draw the top on this anymore, because we've already capitulated below the bottom. The bottom is all that matters on this. But we've fallen below the weekly EMA ribbons and we've broken below this pattern. When was the last time that we had a huge capitulation below the weekly EMA ribbons while we were in a bull market? Bear in mind that is a massive part of what I'm about to describe, because if I didn't say when we were in a bull market, then I could have talked about this data point where we simply just capitulated for a couple of weeks and then blasted up. This was when we were at the bottom of the bear market and coming into the bull market. It wouldn't make sense to compare the top of a bull market to the start of a bull market. It just doesn't make sense. So I'm going to be comparing the top of the market structure that we've got right now on ETH BTC with the top of the market structure we had back in 2018. And what you'll notice is literally we did this twice. So I really want to talk about once we capitulated below the support properly, because this was just, you know, like a quick fake out, and I don't necessarily think we're going to do the same thing again. I'm kind of cherry picking the data, so take that with a grain of salt. I think we're more of in this type of situation than we are in these type of situations, but nonetheless, Ethereum against Bitcoin, the last time this had a weekly EMA flip, the last time we capitulated massively below these patterns, because like I said, if you want to just consider this to be a channel, or alternatively, if you want to consider this to be like a rising triangle, an ascending triangle rather, and you want to consider this like an asymmetrical triangle, then let's go about it like this. What happened when we broke out of this pattern? The weekly EMAs flipped bearish and we massively capitulated. What do you think is going to happen after we break down from this pattern? Well, it really only makes sense that we're once again going to have a mass capitulation. I don't really have much else to say about it. I feel like it'd be kind of degenerative to say, you know, if we come down and hold the 618, then we'll still be bullish. I don't think 618 fibs or Fibonacci's to the downside matter too much. in a bear market. That doesn't mean that they won't be respected, that we can't come down to the 618 and have a bounce, potentially come down to the 618, bounce on the 618, bounce up to the 0.5, and then come back down in a couple of months later. This is personally what I expect to happen for Ethereum, and this would mean ETH against BTC could potentially come down another 50%. This really wouldn't be outlandish, considering this would only be a 65% drop on the Ethereum BTC valuation. A couple things to talk about before we do wrap up this video. Like I said, at least in the short term, I would be having my target up the 618, which means that I think Ethereum is going to capitulate another 30% against Bitcoin. This does not mean it has to happen this week. You know, it doesn't mean it has to happen in the next month or the next 2 months or the next 3 months. If you see, because I wouldn't be surprised, this is a huge pattern. This is, how long has this pattern been going on for? This pattern has been going on for 371 days. This is over a year's worth of data traded within this pattern, and we've just broken below it. Am I saying that we're going to drop like a rock and we're going to be at the lows within the next month? Absolutely not. What happened the last time we broke below this pattern? Well, you can see, you know, we actually on the weekly we bounced back and retested it. So this is what I'm saying, you know, you can break down, you can bounce back up for a week, come and retest it, break down, bounce another week, break down, bounce for a couple of weeks, bounce for a month, bounce for another month, bounce for a couple of weeks, bounce for a couple of weeks, bounce for a week, and it, you know, the general direction is down. So bear in mind, I would not be surprised to see the ETH BTC pair do something like this, especially if we do it in the next week or so. Don't be surprised if we come up another 10% and then start to capitulate. It's definitely likely. And the one thing I want to talk about, which doesn't directly, well, it's more of an indirect effect over on Ethereum, but the next Fed meeting, the next FOMC meeting about the interest rates is going to be on the 15th, which I believe is 20 days from now. What happened the last time we had an FOMC meeting? I don't want to pull up the Bitcoin chart or the ETH chart. I believe it was round about the 4th, but we pumped into this. We basically pumped, the last FOMC meeting was somewhere in these data points. I believe it was the 4th, but don't quote me on that one. It might have been, yeah, I think it was the 4th, but yeah, once again, don't quote me on that one. We kind of pumped into it, and then after the Fed increased the interest rates, we massively capitulated. So I also do think if the Fed decides to increase the interest rates once again coming into the 15th, that is when we could have a mass capitulation, which is why I'm saying over the next month, we could just do something like this. And then we could come down to the 618, and then we could bounce up to the 0.5, and then we could come down to these data points later on in the end of the year. I really do feel like this is the most likely scenario. Bear in mind, I do not have a crystal ball. There's no guarantees from the management here, but this is what I think is going to be playing out for ETH BTC. Like I said, the ETH USD chart is capitulating below the 618. The Bitcoin dominance is breaking out. ETH against BTC, because the Bitcoin dominance is breaking out, obviously all altcoins are underperforming against Bitcoin, and that is why we're seeing Ethereum break down. So I have no idea how long this video is. I'm going to wrap it up now. This video was probably like 20 minutes or so. I do apologize, but I have not covered Ethereum in ages and ages and ages, and I've had tons and tons of requests for people on my YouTube, for people on my Discord saying, can you please cover Ethereum? So I thought I'd go for a big in-depth video of Ethereum, because the likelihood is I don't think I'd be making another ETH video until we either have a mass capitulation down to the 618 or we pump back up to this resistance. And then once again, if we pump up to this resistance, I'll make another video round about here, just kind of reiterating some of my thoughts, what I think is going to be happening next. But you probably won't see my next ETH video until we either come up to here or we come down to the 618, which is my target. So hope to see you in those videos. As I said, sorry the video was a bit long, but I have not covered this in months, so there was many things that I needed to go through. So what I've got for you today, as always, not financial advice. Cowboy out. Peace.